yeah, like I said, I just want to give you some warning before we fade in on, hi everybody, it's Kay.
Hi, it's Juliana.
Still on the road. In fact, in the sense of, although soon we'll be in the same room again, you're right up to your show going up, aren't you, Juliana?
Yeah, exactly. Previews or invited dresses.
Masterclass Theatre Raleigh.
Then opening night is tomorrow night.
I'm so excited for you. And you took over their Instagram. I saved this to talk about when we're actually recording. That was cute. Good job. I loved it. I was like, look, it's her cast, and look, it's things.
Thanks. I was nervous to do it actually because I was the first. She contacted me late Monday night, like around midnight.
No minute like the last one. Hey,
So
take over our social media. Why not?
That's the nice thing about social media is that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You have to think about it a little bit. But and did you notice at one point I held my phone
Sideways.
landscape instead of I wasn't thinking. You know, like normally when you take pictures you want to do.
We all expect it to fix itself and then until it doesn't.
Yes,
and it's always when you're live. I know exactly how that goes down. And then you look like you're 80 and you've been handed this thing called a remote for the TV. Or further back, how do I turn on the phonograph?
Yeah.
What does this do? Yeah, so I'm excited for you. It's so funny, I was thinking about this the other day because we've kind of done a flip-flop in a way, because I remember earlier this year when I was jumping from show to show and always being backstage and being like, well, we had rehearsal late last night, and you were doing things but not quite as busy. So like now I'm the one who's more homebodying right now and like
keeping our show together.
Deeper thought crap, you know, there are 1776 rehearsals, but I'm like, I have like, it's the summer, it's been slower, and I'm letting it, I'm enjoying that. I think I even talked about that a few weeks ago, to be like, it's a bit of a slowdown right now, and I'm letting myself enjoy that. I'm doing some reading, I'm doing some reflecting, lots of journaling, which I think I'm going to get into in What's Making Me Strange this week a little bit. But yeah, this week we're kind of going to let what's in our minds kind of dictate the content again. Juliana might be a little bit more on theater than I will be, just because part of my life has turned into free-form watching things, but I think it will connect back to craft in my mind. Also, my notes are written all higgledy-piggledy, so we will see how this goes.
Do you know that I'm going to go no notes today?
Oh, get ready, folks. It's Juliana we're working without a net today. Woohoo!
No net and extra caffeine.
I just have to ask you, who's a net?
Exciting.
But ching, dad jokes. I'll be over here if you need me. You vaguely alluded to what you're talking about, Juliana, and I'm very intrigued. We had off-mic conversation this week, so you guys don't get to know, but we know. So,
just really spilled the tea.
What's been in your mind, tea spiller?
So I'm in the middle of a show, in the middle of putting a show up. We're about to open. Really, I think like all the work is like before. When it's actually running, I just need sleep.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Sleep and hydration. We talk about those are two of the best things you can do to maintain your instrument. So.
Well, my brain space, it's like I feel like it kind of like compresses files and just kind of puts it away before we actually go into the run of a show.
Right. Yep.
So I have room to prepare for something else. So since we're opening tomorrow night, I am in the space where I know that this week, specifically with 1776 and a couple other shows, I'm going to be starting to look at getting off book.
Yep.
For those two shows. So that's what I want to talk about this week. I want to just talk about actor process, because I know you and I have different processes, even though some of the things we do are going to be similar. And our fellow strange deers out there, everyone's got a different process. So I just wanted to chat about that because I am also an acting teacher. This is something that I think about and talk about, and because I'm a performer, it evolves.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I do not approach material the same way I did even 5-6 years ago. That's
same. Yeah. Same. So I just want to talk about that. I'm curious about what your processes are. I'm getting stabbed by an underwire.
Oh, is that part of your process?
Process.
Look, we're sharing. Part of my process is being open and honest with the material and everything I'm feeling in a given moment, and having no. This is a bit of a rabbit trail, but on that point,
because I feel like I'm so open and honest about so many things in my acting preparation, I think that's why in my private, personal life, I'm like,
like, I need to have something that's behind the door.
Yeah, this is private. You do not get in here. You do
No.
not get to hear all the funny things.
It's funny for me because I feel like I spent most of my childhood keeping it all in here, and really to my detriment of not talking to anybody. Hey, only child. Hey, socially awkward parents who didn't really have friends. We weren't hosting big parties. We weren't out on the lanai, entertaining 20 people. This is all adult K's discoveries. So I think when it comes from, I am going to tie this back to my process now. I sort of have alluded to this in, like, we had a text exchange with our good friend, our dear Michael, who I think it's now going to become another Strange Dear trope that we literally name check him in every single episode. Which we've got
to get him on.
We know he'll love. But I was very surface in approach to the material, very mechanical, and that also is a function of how much tech I've done. I know that. I know for a fact. So I would routinely get called out on, well, what's underneath what you're saying right now. Like, which feels so 101, but it was really something I struggled with for so long. And I've come to a place now where I recognize if I am being very mechanical, it's because I haven't done the what is going on underneath this in this moment. And sometimes that's easier to unlock than other times. But I think it's, I would get so, nuts and bolts is the way I'm going to put this, that sometimes literally the stuff that makes the character underneath was missing. And that took until almost the end of college for me to start unlocking that a little bit. And I realized that it was mostly because Kay personally had, like, this distance from her emotions and keeping things locked in and underneath because we didn't talk about that in my house. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess that sort of answers your question in a way, or at least gives you a little light into how this brain works. God knows, I'm never even sure. But so where's your? We've talked a lot about process, but I'm handing that back to you now for you.
I want to start with auditions because
that's where it all starts.
But I always say this, and this is absolutely true. This has not changed for me. Is to approach auditions as if I'm approaching a rehearsal, and to approach each rehearsal as my next audition. That gives me context. So we want to talk about, like, the mechanical and why it's easy for me to put on a producer hat, and why it's easy for me to work very, very, very hard on an audition, not get it, and be okay.
Yeah. Which is great. That's so much of a struggle for people who audition and don't book it. So that's I love that.
Yeah, so this is what I do. Again, I want to, like, big disclaimer here. This is what I do. I'm very different. Kay and I are different people.
We always do this. We're always like, I'm not an expert, but here's what
Please.
Boilerplate disclaimer.
Your own acting teacher, your own, go to class, do it for real. We are just going to be talking about what we do. And if you get something that you can use, amazing. But, like, don't, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting with an audition, let's start with first round auditions. Let's say where there are sides provided and maybe they're cold reading. I think it's really, really valuable to practice cold reading. A lot of actors, young actors, I'm talking about, like, the high school students that I teach, they don't, and voice as well, because it's not an instrument or a sport that you can, like, go practice and be, like, super accountable for it. Most of practice as an actor and singer is self-guided when you're at home, and you've got to really be, you've got to figure out what works for you. Like, for me, for voice, I take the recordings of my voice lessons, and I feel like I'm living with my voice teacher right now because I'm doing so many of her stuff, because I sing in the show.
Well, yeah, we were saying off camera before we started that you're doing, it's a play, but it's a play with singing, so it's one of those weird fusion pieces, yeah.
Right. It's a play about Maria Callas, and she's teaching a master class, and she has 3 students that come in and sing for her. So, and each of the students are opera singers, so I'm one of those opera singers.
Fusion, yep.
Yeah, so it's a play. In fact, one of the best lines, you can cut this if you want. One of the best lines is the pianist, I'm about to sing. The pianist asks, with music, and she says, yes, with music. This isn't a play.
Oh, look what they did, poking the fabric.
Yes.
Poke, poke. Fourth wall, poke, 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 poke.
That line cracks me up every time. Okay. So here we are, audition work. Okay, so cold reading.
Yes.
One can practice cold reading.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Totally.
You know, there are some perceived disadvantages to being a mother in this theater world.
Yes.
But one of the advantages is you have so many opportunities to practice character voices, physicality, and yes, cold reading.
Okay.
I have read hundreds of children's books.
Yes.
And many of those books are like on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's always the telling of stories.
Yeah.
So I have an advantage. I get an opportunity to read, you know, like some of the favorite books. You know, we're going to switch it up this time. Instead of Cockney, this character is going to be from Louisiana, you know.
Oh, man.
But here's another thing. And
it's all the skill set. Yeah.
This ties into our contemporary plays and reading plays.
Mm-hmm.
If you are reading plays on the regular, it's like when you go to France and I have just like I can get by in France, but I can't have a conversation with a French person.
I'm sorry, I'm cackling because of how casually, like, you know, when you go to France, and I was like, yes, I go there 3 times a week. It's the thing in my mind.
Oh.
And as Jefferson, I go there for real, but no.
But you immerse yourself in the culture for just a little bit, and a lot of things start clicking that you didn't know that you knew. So like vocabulary words, you're like, I never really studied those vocabulary words, but you see it everywhere. Therefore, I know that
practical application.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Practical application. It's nothing quite like that. Yeah.
So similar to the reading of plays, when you're reading them in a certain brain space, you start to see patterns, you start to see functions, you start to see devices all the time. And so you're going to, the more plays you read, and if you're reading a play a week, treat it as a cold reading a week. Why not? Okay. Why not with other characters? Why not, just, the thing to practice is practice going all in.
Right.
That's
don't hold back. This is your chance. Yeah.
One thing that you can practice. Okay. But then you've got the callback. And they say this all the time. The callback, no way should you think that you've got the part by going to the callback.
Yeah.
Externally. Internally, prepare as if you just got the role and this is your first rehearsal. Right. Because that's honestly what they're looking at. They've
culled through the pool, and now they want to put together the people who they could really see themselves in the room with. So bringing that energy is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and they want to see your energy. They want to see how you work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So approaching it from that way is super smart. Super smart.
Yeah, and so much so that you're flexible. I mean, you work really hard. So yeah, you want to be off book. Mm-hmm. For callbacks as much as possible. You want to hold your sides. You also want to know how to hold your sides at a height that doesn't hide your face, but still, I'm
ready to perform now.
I bet you're not going down. These are all really, really basic things, but here's the thing. We all say we know them. We all learned them in college. We all learned them in our audition workshop, but we don't practice them. There's no reason in the world why we can't say, okay, I'm going to do 15 minutes of audition rehearsal, and I'm going to practice holding my side, and I'm going to practice doing this thing, and don't do it in a mirror. Maybe record yourself or whatever.
Well, I was going to say I might drop in a thing that I know you still always. It's looking at yourself on camera. As much as you're uncomfortable with it, you got to do it because that's truly the only way you get an outer eye view of what you're presenting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Here's another thing. You can totally cut this, but I have learned over the past couple of years, and specifically in the show, I have an asymmetrical smile. Mm-hmm. And it's usually this line right here.
Which is murky and like, I got it.
It looks like what I don't mean. I don't know why I do it.
Our faces do fun things. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I called out, actually, in my college voice instructor, called me out on like lifting this side of my face.
Right.
And I did not know what he meant. 10 years later, I figure it out. It's something I do all the time. And so like, I work on getting more symmetrical.
That was like,
unless I want to be.
I told you my professor was like, your eye contact, what are you doing? Why can't you even look at me right now? And I was like, oh, because I'm very repressed and very in my own head right now. Like, he was like, you can't make a connection with anybody if you don't make solid eye contact right now, honey. And then further, yeah, it was a huge problem for me.
I would never guess that.
Because I worked on it, because I was terrified. Like, the other thing I had, hey, guess what? It's share day on this program. I had a lazy eye when I was a kid. My right eye was going rogue, doing its own thing on a different page, sometimes literally. So my parents were lucky enough, it didn't require surgery or anything, but it was an eye patch situation. And what they do, they patch your good eye, your aligned eye, which forces the lazy eye to do all the work. So for me, it was my left, and my right did all the work. But one of the things, and it worked out, and it's great, and I haven't had a problem since, but every once in a while, if you catch my left drooping, it's just because it started to get a little bit like, so I've got a little low lid on one side. Again, it's another thing that I watch, since we started doing the show, I'm like, how's my eyes doing today, Kay? How we doing? Or am I doing this again? Because, like, again, it fixed itself, but, and these are the things, again, you only become aware of with an outside eye looking at you.
That's
and
right.
As much as we might hate it, it's so funny when I think about we started doing this, Juliana. I was like, yeah, you're gonna see yourself on camera a lot. I love that face. And yet you're smiling on both sides. So look, now we've shared and learned things about each other today. And I thought this was gonna be I wasn't sure what the content would be today. Come on.
Okay, so here's another thing to think about, that I think about when I'm going into callbacks. Again, I'm preparing my character. I'm totally preparing as if I have the role, right? And then my demeanor should be like, hey, I'm here. If you want to plug me in, plug me in. If you don't, I'll be okay.
Yep.
And I will. And you will too.
We'll all be fine.
We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Especially because if you ever get on the other side of the table.
Oh.
Just do it. If you are having trouble giving perspective to your auditions, figure out how to get on the other side of the table to observe. Be somebody's assistant. Be somebody's stage manager.
Yeah.
Somebody's assistant director. Just get behind the table and it'll click.
Doing that enough loosened up my terror about, it must be something I did is the reason I didn't get this part. Like, that was how in my head I could be about it. And I was like, no. Honestly, a lot of times the casting panel gets, like, especially if it's a paying gig, if it's a pro gig, you got like a dozen people in front of you, like, they could all do this. And they were all really good. And it's matching, it's look, it's so subjective.
Yeah.
It's truly the part of it you can't control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So two things that I have found very helpful in a callback instance. We want to be flexible. And so the term redirection. I want to be, Kay, I'm struggling because I feel like most of our strange deers are fellow actors. So I don't mind using jargon, but I want to be careful. So feel free to butt in if I'm explaining something. Okay. But the redirect that we typically get from a director is not always because we've done something wrong, but frequently, can this actor do something a different way, or how did they respond to being asked to do something that they haven't,
spot on,
prepared to do, right?
Yep.
So knowing that redirect is not a personal offense, and for some reason I see people get offended by it or shook by it.
Yeah. Well, they're like, oh, that must mean I made a mistake. And that's the fundamental thing. I always, leave your ego out of the room. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. So have in your fingertips, handy, the idea of tropes and types, knowing that don't ever try to guess why you were called in for something, right?
You'll just make yourself crazy. Literally, right. It is an exercise in nothing helpful.
Yeah, and don't try to convince yourself that you shouldn't be there, whatever. But if you're given a redirect, do a split second thing of, are they asking for me to be a different type, or are they asking me to have a different circumstance?
Right.
So I feel like those things sometimes get fused in people's minds in the spur of the moment. And so they all of a sudden become like a totally different person. So just try to understand, we can get into this, later, but just have an understanding as you're reading, as you're preparing for your callback, and this is something I do, is, okay, if this were a different type, how might this play? You know, if I didn't look the way I look, you know, or if my specific circumstance is different. Okay, then let's move on from callbacks. Let's say you get the role.
Yay! Snaps, yes.
Okay. There's two things to build, and actually you started by talking about the kind of like mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And I would put things like memorization, blocking, stage business, right? Into those things of like the mechanics.
Monkey brain, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What needs to happen when?
Yep.
And what words are said. And then there is this other kind of, well, I think of it as like the spiritual side.
Yep.
So we've got the physical side and the spiritual side of like ingesting the character and like you know, becoming the character. And with that, there's also the understanding of the period that the piece was written in.
Correct.
So let's say that you're doing a modern version of something Shakespeare. Well, do your research and also figure out like the context that it was actually written to be in, so that you can translate.
It's really important that you pick something that is written of one era, but then they push it forward in time, because I think that can be confusing for some people. It's like, well, yeah.
If you're talking about a dagger versus a sword, and then you try to make it modern, that might not make that so much of a difference to us, but in the 16th century,
correct,
it maybe did make a huge difference if you're talking daggers versus swords.
Right.
Okay. So there's the kind of like research type, and I consider this spiritual side, the quiet side.
Agreed.
This is actually quiet too. Being an actor and preparing as an actor is a lot more quiet than people think.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like the only time I like actually raise my voice in a character is on stage. But the things that we're preparing for, so getting off book, this is a big thing I did want to talk about. How do you get off book?
Oh gosh, I feel like
you're one of those actors that's like,
yeah, everybody's got their memorization technique that works for them.
Yeah, what do you do?
I actually, the actual memorizing it, I handwrite things back out, believe it or not, because that.
How do you do that?
Yeah, it puts it in a different place for me, because I also do a lot of writing, and it embeds in a different place. And then once I'm in that space with it, very, very nuts and bolts, if available, to have the other actor record their lines, so I have tracks that I can practice to. But I don't know if I'm reading ahead on you here, or if you're literally just talking about inside me. Because the other part of memorizing it for me is not just sitting there and reading it and writing it out, but then hearing it and putting it in that active space where I can react to it while I'm, standing, walking around the kitchen, doing dishes, whatever it is. I'm big on rehearsing lines in the car, even if I'm 3 or 4 performances into a show. I can pull up the track that I generated from that scene where maybe I dropped something the night before, and I'll spit those lines back and forth just to run it in there. Like that's me. And again, it's coming from a very mechanical place, but this is a mechanical aspect. Memorization is mechanical.
Yeah, it totally is. So I do this all like similar things, writing it out. I do that actually when I'm trying to memorize foreign language. I think because
especially yes, dang, totally.
The time requirement out of it.
Mm-hmm.
To think of the next word. I'm more comfortable pausing with a pen to think of the next word than, you know what I'm saying? We sometimes get in our head because we don't have the next word.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
So, yes, that's been helpful for me. Or I will write out my, okay, this is a nerd thing.
That's okay.
I'm fully, like, understanding if it's too nerdy. Okay, in Shakespeare, we have the meter.
Yep.
So whenever I'm doing Shakespeare or anything written in meter, I will actually memorize it in the meter. I will memorize, and I'll snap, and I'll make a recording of myself doing it. In truth, I know not why I am so sad.
Yep. Well, it was written that way for a reason.
Da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, that gets in my head. So what do I do when something is in prose? I'll actually write it out in close to iambic pentameter and record the same thing, and I snap. I have hours of rehearsal voice memos of me
snapping.
I
wish I could. I can't. I never know. Oh wait, well that's sort of snap.
Snap?
I can't snap. Actually, this is really turning into Kay shares. Lazy eye, can't snap. Other than that, she's fine. Yay! All right.
Oh gosh. And I'll snap for like the other characters' lines or whatever. That is my own weird little thing. And so I'll memorize everything so I did this with Venus and Fur. I did this with Oleana. I did this with the show I'm in now, even though I don't have it's not a hugely demanding role. There's 2 speeches. Yep. And I memorized those in a meter. That I think maybe because I'm a musician.
I was about to say this is feeling very much like someone with a music background.
Yeah, it feels like memorizing a song, and then it's easier for me. I hate prescribing.
Okay.
It's easier for me to then play with the text.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why I am so sad, or get a redirect.
You can't. Well, you can't.
No, not why. I can play a little bit more when there's the meter.
You can't color outside the lines until you know where the lines are.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I'm never going to go give my speech. She is the sun and Juliet is in the east. I'm never going to actually speak like that.
Right.
But it's ticking away in my head, and so I feel like I can play with the rubato.
Yeah, you know the shape.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's my thing. Here's my other thing.
Yeah.
Did we talk about this memory palace?
Maybe.
This is like you've maybe seen it on Sherlock. Do you watch the new Sherlock with?
Oh, adore the new Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. Yes.
Yeah. So every now and then you see him going through like going through his memory palace.
Yes.
That's a thing. That's an ancient thing.
Yeah.
The idea of loci, traveling through a location in your mind. There's a lot of good information out there about building memory palaces. So I am not going to pretend like I'm an expert on this. I'm just saying if this is interesting to you at all, use the Google machine.
The Google.
And the YouTube machine to figure this out. But for example, this is my script book right now, and I actually have 3 scripts in here for the next 3 shows that I'm doing.
Good.
But on the cover is the first floor of my memory palace, which is actually the Biltmore estate.
Wow.
North Carolina. So I am such a visual person, but I learn kinetically as well.
Yep.
Like I like to get on the treadmill to memorize. I like to
yes
move around. A lot of people are like that. I'm not special, but
well, pursuant to me recording my lines so I can run on my feet, like that's
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. There's something about engaging that other part of your brain, making it get busy doing something else so that you can just.
Because acting is a full body experience. Imagine that. I can't. Ooh, all right.
So anyway, some people do their memory palaces as a made up place. I happen to be obsessed with architecture, and so
you are.
Use actual, like one of my favorite places in the whole world is Biltmore. This is the Biltmore. There's 4 floors, so depending on how long the piece is,
yeah, you got a lot of places to put your.
But main floors, this is what I use, and I keep it with me, and I use the visual of the blueprint when I'm deciding where each chunk of dialogue belongs in my palace.
Right.
I map it out. Again, like all these little tricks of like setting up your strategy. I'm working memory as I'm going along. I'm playing a game, but I'm also memorizing,
totally.
Just as I'm breaking it apart. But like from the callbacks, I've already memorized a good chunk of the material, right?
Right.
Because they've given me sides, I've memorized it, so I don't have that much further to go after I have the part. And just something else to think about, and this really got me thinking. Brian Koppelman, you've maybe heard me talk about him before. He's the guy, the creator and writer of Billions.
Right.
He did Rounders before that. He has a podcast called The Moment. I think if you're in any way deal with this craft of acting or film, TV, stage work, he has wonderful interviews. I cannot recommend it enough. And I actually have a Google alert set up
for when it drops, because that's amazing.
No, because I get those.
You're like, no, that I got, that I know.
Yeah. I get the podcast alerts, but also I have a Google alert for when he's in the news because he gives so many interviews as well. Nice. He's very generous about the craft and about the creative process, and so. There's an article that came out last month for an interview that he did for a website called Recode.
Okay.
And he has this wonderful quote, and let me just read it. So he's asked a question. You get to see what life looks like, what it does and doesn't look like, and then what's the tension between saying, well, this is what it really looks like, and if we wanted to do it faithfully, it should look like this, versus we need to make something that's going to be working on TV and get a bigger audience. Okay, so that's the question. That's what he's answering here. This is his response. Well, sure, with the stock stuff, but we learned from our early movies, the more specific you are and the more accurate you are to the real thing, somehow the more universal it feels. Yes. People recognize it. You never lose by being super specific and super real, we don't think. There are times you might compress a time. Probably the most common thing you do in any televised drama is to compress the time frame.
Yes.
I just feel like that's such an important nugget to understand. And if you're in an acting class, you more than likely are working on this all the time. But I'm still reminding myself, again, when you get notes from your director, even during the show, and obviously during redirections in an audition setting, go very specific. That's why I say at your fingertips. Have a library. So if the director is asking you to be offended by something, instead you let's say you naturally used to laugh. Your character used to laugh when someone would say something, and now your director wants you to be offended. Okay, don't be like, this is me offended. Just take that half second to be like, the last time. I know that's right.
Yeah.
Got it.
I love it.
Go. And that to me has been more the idea of getting super specific. I love, and I think it's so important as artists, whether we're directing or in a show, that we get super specific and not be afraid of being specific. The first time I got this, I was out of college. Or maybe I was in grad school. I don't remember what it is. But do you know the band The Killers?
Yes.
I love The Killers so much. One of my favorite songs is Glamorous Indie Rock and Roll. The lyrics to the first one. Two of us flipping through a thrift store magazine. She plays the drums, I'm on tambourine. Bet your bottom dollar on me. Okay, just from that one little verse, I got it. How being specific, you win the universal emotion. Yeah. When you're very specific. Okay, I don't think I've ever sat in a thrift store flipping through a magazine.
Literally.
But because it's so specific, I instantly have a picture and a feeling. And then bet your bottom dollar on me. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I know what that's about.
You know who's great about random but universal kind of things is Ben Folds. Yeah. Like, especially his solo stuff. Because it sounds, on the surface, you've got very... just kind of quirky, weird mental images he's giving you. But, I love Rockin' the Suburbs, the entire album from end to end, his first big solo thing. I also love the Ben Folds 5. But I hear you entirely, as far as, it just makes it go, oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about practicing as an actor. You should have a radar. You should. I do.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can. I think one...
Juliana stakes a claim and then walks it back.
I know, yeah, like, I don't want to be bossy, but I think it's incredibly helpful to develop a radar for, oh, that's specific, or this piece of art is making me feel a very specific memory or feeling. Pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
You know, Kay was talking about building the inner life of the character. That's what it is. That story isn't, I get a little tired of, I was born here, my mother was feeling this, I was like da-da-da-da-da. Those are helpful, I think.
Biography, yeah, but it's not, it's under that.
Right, that's biography, right. That's not what a backstory is. A backstory is, when I see this thing, I feel this.
Yeah.
And it's neat to say, because my mother never took me to this thing. You can, but it's
because
just,
my father died when I was 14, and I have a problem getting close to people.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, so I try when I'm speaking to my acting students, is I avoid the word backstory because I don't love
it's so tightly associated with biography, which is they're not synonyms, but they can be in a lot of minds.
That's it, and I think unfortunately they are in a lot of undergrad programs to nobody's help. So inner life is so much more quiet than writing out a biography. I know people who have directors who ask them to come with a biography to first rehearsals.
Yeah. We actually know. We did that all the time, not to pull it back in here, but in college, we did that all the time. Yeah.
I remember having to do that as well. And I guess it gets the juices flowing. So
it's your
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry to diss anybody who does that.
I don't know. I mean, the question is that, do you use that as your platform to build from, or do you never build off of that platform? I think is what you're saying. You can go from there. Yeah.
I think, maybe because we were required to do that as college actors, now it's automatic.
Yeah.
I do automatically be like, okay, therefore I was born in 1955.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm this age at this point in time. And so, I feel like that's kind of like automatic. That becomes like
you were born in 55, but what does that mean to how you absorb the world?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. It's not just this, like, I'm not just then like preparing to walk on stage as I was born in 1955. I was born in 1955. Like, that's not the thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Got the role, preparing for it. We're getting off book. We're ready to do it. Here's my very last thing. I talk about this all the time. Be a good colleague.
Yeah.
Just try really hard. Because remember I said, treat every rehearsal like your next audition. It really is. And you and I are both in a place where we're, thank God, getting people saying, I've worked with you before, I would like to work with you again. Here is a role.
Yes.
Would you like to do this role instead? We are #blessed. But also, we've both worked for that.
Right. Yep.
And let's acknowledge that there is a temperament that is easier to work with, and there is a work style that is easy for people to work with, and your reputation becomes so much more important the more things you do. It speaks for in place of your resume, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. If you're new to our podcast, I've never done that, and I probably will never again.
I like it, though.
Anyway, so if you're new to Strange Deer, well, first of all, welcome. Hey, please stick around. We are theater-centric. We are kind of, I think in a way, sort of like great nuggets about life as well, even if you're not a theater person. But you can find us all over social media. We're at Strange Deer on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Pinterest. We go live every week on Thursday nights when we drop a new episode. And yeah, we are a weekly podcast. Even though when we're crazy busy, we make sure we're out every week. So look at us. So follow along. You've seen all the little icons flying in if I'm doing my usual work here. You can literally find us at Strange Deer anywhere. Or if you'd like to email us on the side, we are at strangebutTrueDeer@gmail.com. We're always looking for new ideas for episodes. Maybe there's something currently in the news that you'd like to, well, not like, maybe not politics, but if you're talking about something entertainment-wise, we would love to give a chat on that. Got an idea for an episode? Just let us know. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'm going to start off my segment, Juliana, with a question for you.
Okay.
And this is going to sound pretentious for a minute, but that's okay. We love to stick our disclaimers all over our episodes. Have you had that experience where you discover something very early on before it really catches fire? And it gives you a weird ownership feeling on it. But then you also catch yourself in your pretension and go, all right, you weren't the only person. Clearly this was put on Netflix for a reason.
100%.
No. What I want to talk about, because I was originally going to make this What's Making Me Strange this week, but it occurred to me this was not this week. I actually watched this probably about a month back.
Okay.
Have you been hearing the buzz around a stand-up comedian named Hannah Gadsby and her special Nanette?
Nanette, yes.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
No, kind of on purpose, because I know what I've heard from it. I need a little bit of time and headspace.
You're reading ahead on me, because I was like, you must watch this, Juliana. It so feeds into what we've done, but not while you're, because you talked about having the bandwidth and Handmaid's Tale and
exactly.
all that.
It's on my list of with the Handmaid's Tale and.
I mentioned feeling proprietary on it only because now it's impossible to see this, and like it was written up in the New Yorker, like there are huge think pieces on it now. Like you Google, it's funny. When I first watched this, it must have been the day it was released, just because it showed up in my feed, and I went, I need some fun stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Like there were no articles on it yet. Now literally Google will autofill if you type in Hannah with Gadsby. Like that's when you know things have sort of slid up a little.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, this could be a fun little night of stand-up comedy. She's Australian. She's the kind of comedian that personally resonates with me. I love A, female comedians, and B, ones who aren't like, look how pretty I am. Like, I'm like, you're up there, you're talking about life. Like, I feel the same way about comedian Tig Notaro, who I've now seen live once, and oh my.
Tig, I feel bad even calling her a comedian.
Tig is just a slice of life person.
She's so much more than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because Nanette is actually getting comparisons to Tig Notaro's 2012 special, Live.
Yes.
Live. However you want. Actually, it's kind of funny that it has that double read on it, because very famously, do you know Live?
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, this was kind of the thing that built her career, because some people shorthand her to the cancer comedian. She was doing a set at Largo very shortly after being diagnosed with breast cancer, and it wasn't just cancer, it was mom had died, girlfriend broke up with. Like, she is literally in a place where the last thing you would think to do is joke. Like, and yet she's having this great career moment. She's like, it was so weird to watch my personal life falling apart while, like, my career is starting to take off. So she was like, I have these jokes written that are kind of my standard set, but I'm not feeling this right now. I just need to talk to you about where I'm at. And the comedy came out of the realness, came out of the sharing, like also her natural way of being. Like, that's her style. So, and with Tig, it was once the hype wagon had started. But it's so funny to see Nanette being compared to Live, whichever you want, because Hannah Gadsby, and she talks about this in the special a little bit. I'm not going to spoil things for you horribly, Juliana, but she's from Tasmania, Smithton, Australia. That's the tiny island that's off the mainland, which is by itself kind of funny. She's 40 years old. She had her BA in art history, and she's in stand-up comedy. But she would use her comedy in her art history work, and like giving tours of museums and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from. And this special in particular was filmed at the Sydney Opera House. So it's a big audience. And it is being heavily connected to the hashtag Me Too movement because of where she goes with it. I'm just going to use the quote from the New Yorker here to talk about it. They call it a commentary on comedy itself, on what it conceals and how it can force the marginalized to partake in their own humiliation. there's a turn. Like, none of this I knew going in. I was just like, oh, this is going to be a comedy special. And indeed, she starts off like your traditional comedian does. There are some nice, calls out immediately. You're like, yes, I'm a lesbian, and lesbian jokes, and lesbians laugh differently. And like it's all the stuff you'd expect her to be kind of going for. And then she starts psychologically breaking down comedy. And in a very, I'm making it sound dry, but it's not at all. She talks about kind of the contract you have as a comedian to make a joke out of these things you experience, and then how it's implicitly understood. Then you release the tension, build it and then let it go, and let it go. And she's like, you know what? A lot of these jokes that I've just told you, I can't let go of the tension on this because here's what was happening behind it. Yeah. And here's why it's so hard for me to do comedy anymore. It's talked a lot kind of about how comedians are really the people with kind of tragic or something that they're hiding in their background. And, it comes out most specifically when you have things like Robin Williams committing suicide and you find out all the things that were underneath it, or how screwed up someone like Andy Kaufman was. And they really use this as an active escape mechanism. And they are letting you laugh. What? Sorry?
Or survival.
Yeah, oh no, exactly. And I have to say, I think whether or not you're a stand-up comedian doing a circuit right now, or whether you're just a person who occasionally laughs off something that actually was pretty epically bad for you, but you're trying to let the other person know, it's okay, I don't want to make you feel bad because I went through this thing. We all naturally do that in our lives, and I think in talking about building character, that's something, that goes into every human's experience. So find those moments in your work as well. Nanette is, again, I don't want to spoil this for you, deeply powerful. It took me to a place of utter silence in the middle of a stand-up comedy routine.
Wow.
And going, this is deep, this is huge. And it takes it in a place that's very important, that I think people are doing themselves a huge disservice if they dismiss it as the angry lesbian who talks about, how much life affected her and blah, blah, blah. Let go of do your best to go into it as open as you can, and be ready to have some feels, to have some heavy thoughts, because it is balls out honesty in a way that I haven't experienced since Tig Notaro. And even then, Tig lets us be okay with the laughter, with the, she kind of ends it up with, but it'll be okay. Well, I might not be okay, but you'll be okay. Like it's a joke to cover going, well, I'm about to have a double mastectomy here and things might be not so good. Hannah doesn't let you do that, and I think it's very important that she does not. And again, I watched this, it must have been longer than a month ago now, but everybody's talking about it. Do not dismiss this as a buzz piece. Do not dismiss this as something that is specific to a type of person who only they will get these jokes. Literally everybody should be watching this thing. So we're strange this week. Well, we're strange every week. But what's making you strange this week, Juliana?
So do you remember a couple of weeks ago, I was like, these are the books that I go through that I usually carry around with me in some combination. I want to do the same thing with some of the podcasts that I listen to.
Please, yeah.
That are helpful to me specifically as an actor.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
It's morning.
Yay.
So these are some of the podcasts I listen to that help me specifically as an actor. Ready?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go through these quickly, but we'll link them. Dissect, which is a serial look at music albums.
I'm
in production. If you want to be able to put on your producer hat, it's a good one. Binge Mode is a recap podcast. Recaps film and television. No, actually, I think it's just television. Television that one would binge. I think this is important if you're an actor who wants to be aware of what else is happening out there, what's going over, what's not going over. Again, more producer-y type thing. Anna Faris is Unqualified, is a podcast that's hosted by the good and great Anna Faris, who you know from big and small screens. But you also get like little nuggets of like inside information, like
Got it.
What's it like to have that kind of life.
Fantastic.
All right, WTF is Mark Maron's podcast.
Right.
Stand-up comedian, but he is also in the fantastic show Glow. He is interviewing playwrights, actors, directors. This is an important, like, we need to be paying attention to the thoughts that are rattling around in these minds, whether we like their work specifically or not. A lot of great information. The podcast that I referenced specifically in this episode is The Moment with Brian Koppelman. Wonderful stuff. Writers, actors, directors, thinkers.
Yep.
You must remember this is, do you know this? Karina Longworth, she's talking about basically classic film, digging deep through classic film stars and, backstory type information. Really interesting. Bill Simmons is a sports writer. You probably know him more than I do.
Yeah.
But he does hang around a lot of actors and directors. So every now and then you'll get a Judd Apatow or Sharon Stone interview. Let me just tell you something. The reason this is such an interesting format, podcasting, right? Because people feel all of a sudden much more when they don't have a camera in their face. People are getting real, they're getting honest, they're getting quite candid. And because these are all long form, they're giving you a lot of juicy details, not salacious, but like a lot of great information about not just how to navigate this field, but like some really good acting advice. So it's the context in which these actors and directors and writers are speaking that makes it so special, right, to give us this information.
Yep.
My Brother and Me, fantastic comedy podcast if you're interested in improv. I am amazed at the work that these guys do. It's also, just really fun and interesting. Pop culture happy hour. If you want to know where we're inspired for a lot of our strange things, it comes from places like that.
Nice.
And Alec Baldwin, whether you like him or not, he's got a podcast that's called Here's the Thing, where he does interview a lot of theater, Broadway professionals, cool. Which makes it a little different than from the Brian Koppelman. He's mostly working with film professionals. Yep. Alec Baldwin does interview quite a few theater greats. So I feel like that's an important piece of media to consume if you're a theater actor. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's a new podcast by these two girls. It's called Strange Deer, and it's eccentric. And listen,
someone stole our idea. Who are these bitches? I mean, I'm gonna censor the crap out of myself in this episode.
If you're a listener, if you like what we do, in any way, shape, or form, we would love your reviews and your insight that you have to throw our way. Let me just tell you this, Kay. Most of with the exception of Karina Longworth and Binge Mode, these are male-led interviews, right? Mm-hmm. I love men. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, yay.
But let's I'm inspired, and there's no reason why we can't have more female-led, interesting interviews going out there. Kay, I would love that for us.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Strange Deers, if you know of some podcast that we should be listening and be inspired by, throw it our way. Throw it up as a comment on Facebook, Instagram.
It's so interesting. You're bringing that up because I actually, and it's something that's since ended, but Paul F. Tompkins,
yes.
And his YouTube interview series, Speakeasy, which he ended a couple years ago now, but I only recently discovered it, and it's amazing and it's hilarious, and he's Paul F. Tompkins in his Paul F. Tompkins style, sitting at a bar, looking like it's about 40 years ago, 50 years ago, but talking to current entertainers and a lot of stand-up comedians and stuff. But I'm sitting here going, there's a lot of white male here. So,
yeah. And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, and I don't.
Oh, no, not at all. It's just,
if anything, I'm envious.
Yeah. No, totally. But
I want that to be us. There's pseudo queens. There's throwing shade. There are a lot of women. Obviously, my favorite podcast in the world, My Favorite Murder. There are women doing a lot of really great work. Yeah. It is something just to note that still in this in the acting world, yes, there is a whole lot of white male when truly in reality, a lot of us girls are kicking around. A lot of people of color doing.
Give the ladies and give the diversity a chance. That's all we're saying. So I don't want to end this on a weird dark place in what's making me strange this week, but as I said at the beginning of the episode, Juliana's the one who's actively in crazy rehearsal land right now, doing multiple shows on top of each other. We've inverted towards this end of the year. Our roles have reversed, so I've had time to kind of stop and think about things, or I've had a availability in my brain to kind of let some things in. Two of my personal favorite podcasts, I guess, this is how I'll tie to you. I always love the Jillian Michaels show. Yes, she's the old Biggest Loser trainer, but please divorce the Biggest Loser from her. Or as she hilariously talks about, yes, it got her famous, but it's amazing to travel around, especially in non-English speaking countries, to have people identify you and go, oh, you're the Big Loser.
Oh.
Big Loser!
Like, that's me.
Jillian is way more than what NBC lets you see. She is.
I'm sure a lot of reality stars could say that.
Oh my God, she is a much more holistic weight loss person, and I think that's especially important to point out right now, given the fact that there's a lot of bad buzz about things that are going on behind the scenes of Biggest Loser. If there's a reason she left. Anyway, so she's one of my favorite go-to podcasts, but I also adore the Thomas Jefferson Hour with Clay Jenkins.
You.
I'm such a nerd, and I will say that doing 1776 brought this into my life.
Yeah.
But Clay Jenkinson is a humanities scholar who has been professionally portraying Thomas Jefferson for 30 plus years now. And it's funny because people just assume he's some sort of a historian, or that was somehow his, presidential studies were his focus. It's not. It's just something it's something that he fell into doing.
Yeah.
In the 80s, when we were but small children.
Wow.
And he, first of all, he breaks from the colonial Williamsburg style of talk as far as being in character and being locked within your era. He, I would say wisely, is portraying Jefferson beyond his time, who has some knowledge of our now. And by putting Jefferson there, he is able to talk about events that are happening now.
Interesting. And that's a really interesting distinction.
And I think that's why, let me also say, the Thomas Jefferson Hour has been going for about, I believe he said 15 years now, for at least half of the time he's been portraying Jefferson. You'd think, how do you keep that fresh for a man who died in 1826? Like, don't you run out of biography at a certain point? And the answer is yes, if you stayed locked in the colonial Williamsburg model, not to take anything away from Bill Barker, who's been playing Jefferson forever, ironically almost as long as Jenkinson. They just have very different approaches. Like, even Barker gives Jefferson a southern accent. Jenkinson doesn't do that.
Right.
And there's a whole other nerdy rabbit trail I could go down about how our conception about what accent sounded like back then is way
off. Yeah. Don't get me started, because I will go on for 40 minutes.
Yeah. No, we'll do that as a side thing. That's a peel-off episode for some other time. But I bring up Clay because he was talking this week. They do in-character episodes, but they also do out-of-character episodes. And this week he was talking about how he moderates discussions. They get a lot of listener feedback, obviously, in both directions. You can't help but get political when you're portraying a dead president, as they jokingly sometimes. His co-host, David Swenson, is also remarkable. David has no history background in it. Really, he started as an engineer who just started becoming the avatar for us in the now, talking to President Jefferson for in-character episodes. But for out-of-character episodes, because Clay also, in a broader historian, he portrays a lot of different guys too. Like, he plays Teddy Roosevelt. He plays oh boy, come on, Kay. He's got a bunch. John Steinbeck, for instance. Like, he does these in character all the time. And in that context, he speaks in a lot of places. Oh, he also plays Meriwether Lewis, so it's in Jefferson's world, but he has a huge Lewis and Clark love. So he winds up moderating a lot of discussions. And he was talking about how a lot of times, especially if it's in a heated situation, talking about politics, talking about, he's in the Midwest, he's in the Dakotas. There's a lot of Sturm und Drang. Yeah, there you go. But he said he's noticed a thing in conversation. And this is kind of the holistic takeaway that I've got, not beyond just nerdy Jefferson stuff. He's noticed that a lot of discussions start off very inflammatory. Once you've let a person have their sort of primal scream moment where they feel heard, you can actually start to have a real conversation. And that reminded me so much of what we were talking about last week with Mr. Rogers and his use of silence, and how you would ask, and instead of immediately following up an answer with another question, letting the silence sit for a minute and see what else comes out.
Yeah.
And I think what I was just sort of taking away, because also I've really had to throttle how much I allow the news into my world, because it'll tank you like nothing else will. And social media can do it to you as well. I mean, there's a whole other episode here about healthy ways to manage your social media so you can still function. But in talking about, there's just a lot of anger, and there are a lot of people who aren't feeling heard right now. And our mistake is in shying away from talking, or in telling someone that their opinion isn't valid. Because it's actually interesting to talk about Jefferson too, because people think we're the most partisan we've ever been, but if you look back at the election of 1800, it's it's a lot of the same stuff. We go through these periods of hyper-nationalism and hyper-partisan politics, and I think the key in every case is to keep dialogue open, keep discussions going. So that kind of just struck with me, because it also tied into last week when we were talking about Fred Rogers and having the conversation and letting people feel heard, and then being able to actually, maybe, heavens, imagine this, take down some walls and talk. Why having an actual running order would be smart, Kay. Okay. But who needs a running order when it's on the road and it's off the cuff and it's the end of the episode, guys?
It's wild and crazy.
So thanks for listening in this week. As we've been saying, all throughout the episode, if you have feedback for us, check us out at Strange Deer. You can tweet at us. You can post on our Instagram. I was going to say tumble at us, but that could be weird. And I don't think anybody, literally nobody says that. You can email us at strangebutTrueDeer.com. I can speak. Truly, I can.
Gmail.com.
I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. It's fine. It's fine. You know how to find us. The graphic will tell you everything you actually need to know. Don't listen to this person. And if you're listening to the episode and can't see the graphics, well, that's just too bad for you.
You're obviously tech savvy enough to be able to find us.
This is how you retain listenership and viewership, Juliana. You insult them.
That's
so
it.
On that note, we will let you go, Juliana.
Just remember to stay strange, dear.
But not in a way that gets you arrested, because I don't have bail money. I can't even speak today.
Woo! Oh, you did a Muppet accent.